Hi friends, it's Monique and I'm so glad to be back. It's been about 9 months since my last YouTube video, so if you're still here, thank you so much for sticking with me. Today I'm really excited to be celebrating with Jessica Michaels. She's recently reached 1,000 subscribers on her YouTube channel, and today I'm going to be scraplifting her and joining in a fun YouTube hop to celebrate her lovely achievement. So I've been playing with different formats for my scrapbooking lately. I've only done a couple layouts in this A4 format. If you work in inches, that's about 8 inches by 11.5 inches. So it's definitely a bit smaller than 12 by 12. So I have been enjoying playing around just to see how this new format suits me before I make my final decision. So today's layout is in the A4 format, and I've started off with a scrap of rainbow pattern paper from Bella Boulevard, and I've cut some of the strips. I want to condense them a little bit so I can get that full rainbow spectrum across the bottom of my page. So far I'm quite liking this size, but I reserve the option to go back to 12 by 12. I do like the idea of being able to just buy a binder that I like from the shops to be able to use for my albums. Definitely a little bit more easily accessible and a little bit more cost effective, so I'm going to see how this goes. So I'm just ruffling up the edges of the bottom of that piece of white card so that I can stick it down so that rainbow is peeking out, and just trimming off the edge there. And then I'm using a sheet of A4 foolscap paper just as kind of like my template, so that I can make sure that my scrapbook page is the correct size. So I've obviously added that little rainbow bit on at the bottom, so it's made my page a little bit longer. Now I'm just going to trim off a little bit extra at the top because I want to add another piece of patterned paper at the top. So in Jessica's layout, she's got a lovely sheet of rainbow stripe pattern paper that goes the full border of her 12 by 12 layout. However, working with A4, I'm going to just adapt that a little bit. I don't have the same width of a page, so I'm just going to be using pattern paper at the top and pattern paper at the bottom. So again, I'm just using my piece of white A4 paper just as my size template. This is a very, very technical way of doing it. It's the best way I could think of so that I could get the size right and simple without having to use a ruler to measure. So it works well and the sizes match up perfectly. So I've also just distressed the edges and ruffled them up a little bit at the top so that it matches the bottom. I've just grabbed this set of metal dies. It's a lovely set. It's from scrapbook.com, and I'm going to be using it for part of my title. Now, I really want the word rainbows to match that rainbow stripe at the bottom, so I've grabbed a 6x6 Bella Besties pad of rainbow coloured papers. And what I love about Bella Boulevard is their Bella Besties colours all match their pattern papers, so it's really a great way to kind of coordinate with their pattern papers. So I'm cutting each one of those letters out in a different colour pattern paper so that I've got the full rainbow spectrum, and it's just going to kind of flow from that rainbow stripe at the bottom. At this point I wasn't 100% sure what my title was going to be, so I cut out the full word rainbows, but in the end I only ended up using the word rainbow. I was kind of wanting a quote that would kind of reference rainbows, something positive. I've gone for more of a darker colour scheme at the top of the layout, kind of fading into the brightness of the rainbow, and I've tried to emulate that with the photos, just printing 2 of the photos that are the same, but one in black and white nearest the top, which is going to be the darker colours, and then one in colour, which is near the rainbow colours at the bottom. Now I have grabbed 2 of my distress ink pads. I'll pop the colours down in the description box below for you, and this is one of the first mixed media techniques I ever played with when I first started scrapbooking, and it just seemed appropriate for kind of coming back into scrapbooking after a few months of not being creative. So it was a great way just to kind of get back into using some mixed media. I've not used mixed media cardstock, just regular textured cardstock, so that means the wet ink just totally get soaked up by the pattern paper. But because I'm not using a lot of water, it's absolutely fine. My page isn't going to get warped or anything. Now I've got this lovely stencil. It's from Bramble Fox, and I want to just have this beautiful sunburst behind my photos. So I've got 3 different colors. One is an oxide, Distress Oxide in Squeeze Lemonade, and then the 2 others are Distress Inks. Now I know you're not supposed to use them together. I'm not sure of the science behind it, but you're not supposed to mix the colors. I'm not sure if it damages the ink pad. You will see when I'm finished with the 2 little Distress Inks, I give them a wipe, because even though I use different daubers, when I used the Distress ink, I was going over the Distress Oxide, and it was kind of like picking it up a little bit. So I just wiped down those ink pads just to make sure that I'd not transferred anything over. So I went around the entire sun. I kind of did a bit of an ombre effect with the darker colors nearer the center, and now, as you can see, I'm just moving that stencil around to try and fill in some of the white gaps. I really just wanted to just have all these gorgeous rays bursting out from the page, so I've made some of them slightly longer, some a little bit shorter, but I've also been careful not to go right up to the edge of the stencil so I don't have any harsh lines. Now I'm just splashing on a little bit of water, and I'm going to dab that up with some paper towel just so that you can see a few kind of like water splatters. I love the effect of that, almost like it's rained. Whenever there's a rainbow, there's usually been some rain with sun shining through, and I feel like this water effect kind of makes me think of that. I'm going to show you a close-up in just a moment so you'll be able to see. But the photos that I chose for this, well, the photo that I printed out twice, there was, towards the end of last year, there was just the most magnificent rainbow. Just on the school run after fetching the kids from school, I've never seen a rainbow quite so bright. It was quite a hazy day, but it was luminous, and the photos just don't do it justice. It was just absolutely magnificent. So even though you can't see the full effect in the photos, I really wanted to just have this moment on record, because we spent such a long time outside just staring at it. I spent a million moments trying to take a photo and try to capture the beauty, but it's never ever quite possible. So yes, so I'm glad I finally got these down. But I'm just matting these photos with the same pattern paper that I've got in that top strip. It's just very subtle with just a little bit of interest with those black spots, and gives a nice white border to my photos. Now I'm going to distress the edges as well, again using my scissors, and it's just going to give a nice little bit of extra interest and texture. So I mentioned earlier that I wanted a rainbow quote that felt really positive. I couldn't think of one off the top of my head. I had quite a few kind of milling around. So when I'm in that situation where I'm wanting a quote but can't quite think of it, I go to Google, I type in some keywords. So in this case, I typed in rainbow quote, and it brought up a whole bunch of options. Now I find it so much easier when something's visual, so I clicked on images, and then it brought up a whole bunch of rainbow quotes but images, so it's easy for me to read. It's just a bit more visual, and I found this quote that I really liked, and it says, "Keep looking up, there may be a rainbow waiting for you." And there certainly was one on this day, and the most beautiful one at that. So I've stuck with black alphas for the top, just where it's slightly darker, kind of with my theme and my idea of kind of fading into the rainbow at the bottom. Now I'm just raising up those rainbow alphas just with some foam squares. Now my layout turned out quite different to Jessica's. I did have a different idea in my mind. I had it kind of all mapped out. However, when I picked my photos, it really changed my plan, so it is a little bit different. However, I've definitely used Jessica's layout as a starting point, and I love her original, and it was lovely to be inspired by her beautiful creation. Now I'm just using these tiny little stamps to stamp out the extra text. I really don't want to take away from the rainbow title there, so I want to keep these extra words quite subtle, but obviously I still want them to be there so that the quote makes sense. Now when I'm doing that bottom line of text, I know where I want the text to end, so I start with the last letter at that end point and then work my way backwards. So I felt the flow would be better if the stamped text would start on the left hand side, then the word rainbow, and then kind of finish with the stamped text trailing off to the right. Now I'm raising up my coloured photo using some craft foam. just to give a little bit of extra dimension. And then my black and white photo is going to be stuck directly onto the background. And once those are stuck down, it is time to embellish. So I've grabbed this beautiful sunshine. It's a Bella Pop from Bella Boulevard, and I've had it for quite a while and I love it, and I knew I was saving it for the right project. I then wanted to have like a little rainbow or something on that bottom right hand corner of the photo. So I've really just gone through my stash. Because I've used Bella Boulevard for this layout, I have gravitated to my box of Bella Boulevard supplies just to see what will work best. And I love that little rainbow. I go and I cut the pink clouds off, and I use some acrylic pieces, and then I take them off. You can see the acrylic pieces there. And then at some point I take them off and I re-stick down the little pink clouds that I had cut off. So that rainbow goes through a process, but it eventually stays as it was meant to be. Now, those little butterflies are fussy cut from one of the lovely patterned papers, and I think they just work perfectly, just kind of floating up through the page. I'm adding in some little yellow sequins now as well, just for a little bit of extra sparkle and interest. And then I'm going to stick everything down. I think that's something that's certainly not changed since my last YouTube videos. I can spend forever fiddling with sequins. So now I've got my trusty Nouveau Deluxe adhesive, which is still a favorite, and I'm just adding it to the center of those butterflies, leaving the wings folded up so that they look like they're flapping, and then a wee drop for each of the little sequins. I had originally pulled out a rainbow of different colored sequins, and I've done this before where I've intended to use all the different colors of the rainbow, but because the layout's already colorful, it was just a little bit distracting. I think the colored sequins work really, really well when you've got a tone-on-tone theme going, but I don't really have that here, so I've stuck with the yellow, kind of mimicking the sunshine in the background. Then I had this little leftover strip of that rainbow stripe, so I'm just kind of measuring it and sticking it underneath, and it's only afterwards that I've stuck it that I realize I haven't actually lined up those colors with the bottom bit, and it just annoyed me. So you'll see a little bit later on, I kind of pull it out a little bit so that orange bit is sticking out to the left a bit, and I decided to leave that orange bit sticking out. I'm going to add journaling to the left, so it'll work quite well. Now, when I was cutting out those butterflies, I noticed that the back of the paper was black with this little white spot, and I'd actually originally been looking for a black patterned paper for the top. So when I noticed that, I decided that I was going to swap out the white and black spot that I used previously, and I really just feel that black just is really striking and gives a really nice edge at the top of that pattern paper and really kind of offsets the lovely bright colors. Now I've got this lovely yellow pops of color, and I'm just adding in a few extra little dots along with those sequins just for extra texture. It's a lovely pearlescent yellow, so it's lovely and shimmery and just adds an extra little bit of sparkle and shine. Now I'm pulling out all my favorites, my stickles, just to add extra glittery accents to all the butterflies. So the three main butterflies that I've got, making that triangle around my photos, I'm just adding some little sparkles to the top of their wings. And then I'm going on to my favoritist of favorites, the Nouveau Glimmer Paste in Moonstone. It is my absolute favorite. I actually have a couple bottles sealed, ready to be used, because I love adding it to everything. So I just dip my finger in and kind of wipe it over that word, those letters for the word rainbow, and it just adds the most magnificent shine. It just goes with everything. Well, I think so. If you like glitter, if you don't like glitter, maybe not. But it really is one of my favorites to add. Now, I decided I wanted to add some black splatters. I didn't forget that I was not using mixed media cardstock. However, I didn't think about it. And you'll see in a little bit that I decided to dab them up. And it didn't quite have the same effect that I was anticipating, and I think that's because I usually use mixed media cardstock and I wasn't thinking. So the spots, the dots of black paint had already kind of been absorbed by the cardstock, so when I dabbed it up, it just kind of smushed them and didn't lift as much of the colour as I'd thought. So the finish effect was not quite what I was anticipating, but I think I've made it work. I've just added a few more splatters, and it always works out. There's a way to fix most mistakes, and I was happy with how it turned out in the end. So here is a little close-up look at my finished layout. Thank you so very much for joining me today after 9 long months. It's so good to be back, and especially good to be back sharing in Jessica's excitement in reaching 1,000 subscribers on a YouTube channel. Please do pop along to the comments and click on all the links to visit all the other lovely channels to see what they've created to celebrate Jessica's milestone. As always, I'll have links for you below for all the products I've used. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!